everybody, it's Carmen from the Family Handyman Workshop, and today we're not doing a project, we're talking tools, specifically the table saw. But before you can work a tool, you gotta know how the tool works, and I'm gonna show you how. Basically, a table saw is a blade set in a stationary place on a post or an arbor, which is basically a stick that spins. There's a motor under it, and then you've got a table that holds everything into place. The thing is, with circular saws or jigsaws, you're holding the material in place and you're running the tool through. With a table saw, the blade is in place and you're running the material through. So because of that, you have to have extra safety features. So let me show you all of the components of a table saw. That way you know how to troubleshoot and to remain safe. So on the actual table, which is the flat part that you see here, you've got these slots, and they're miter slots to actually hold different accessories. We move over to here. This is a throat plate. You can actually remove it. And over here, connected to the safety guard, is a riving plate. When you push the material through, this ensures that the wood stays separated and doesn't pinch down, which prevents kickback. You don't want the blade to pinch down on the wood. It heats up, the wood bloats, and you're gonna get some kickback. So if you're a beginner, never, ever, ever, ever take off the blade or the riving plate. So beyond that, when you're gonna set your measurement, we've got our little stop right here, and it's attached to a tape measure. They're rarely accurate, so most carpenters will use a measuring tape and then measure back from the blade to where the actual fence is. So this is the table saw fence attached to the measuring tape. Make sure it's accurate, double check it with a measuring tape. Then we're gonna work our way down. We have here, this crank wheel raises up and down the blade. So wherever you wanna go, up or down, it is where you're gonna go with that. You wanna ride your material about an 1/8 inch lower than the blade. As you come over here to the side, you've got the crank wheel for angles. Today we're just talking straight cuts, so you don't need to do that. Then over here, we have an on-off, and it's gonna blink. Different table saws have different features. And then you've got your stop button on or off. If you notice, the stop button is at a place where if you get into a problem, you can actually kick it with your knee. So that if your hand can't get to it, you're dealing with your materials, you can turn it off with your knee. And that is strategically placed on most table saws for that reason. Now this table saw is very stationary, it's weighted down. But if you're out in the field with one of those table saws that have legs, make sure you weight that down with either some extra wood or some sandbags, because they get a little tippy. As you look around our table saw, we've added accessories, an off-feed table and an extension that way to make our measurements longer so that we can actually deal with very long or wider pieces of wood as we're going in and out. So, on top of that, there are other safety features that you're gonna wanna have on hand when you're using a table saw. Number one, push sticks. And we also have a feather board. So a push stick, most of them have foam on the bottom, and it's about what you feel comfortable with, and it's also about the size of the material that you are cutting. Essentially, you do not want to get your hands within 6 inches of the blade, which happens to be about where your miter slots are. So you always want to clear that reference. Here's another version of a push stick. The big thing about push sticks is you want to have one on either side so that when you're working the material, if you're not going to have your hands further than 6 inches away from the blade, you're going to want to use a push stick on either side. Now, then we're also going to have the option of a feather board. Now, what's a feather board? A feather board is when you're doing delicate pieces of wood, smaller pieces of cuts, that you put it into place and it locks in magnetically just like this, and I can't move it. And what that does is these little feathers right here have a little bit of movement. So if it's a little piece, it'll kind of give a little bit and allow the blade not to pinch, but yet it'll maintain the measurement and the spacing so that you get an accurate cut. So now that you know all the bits and pieces of a table saw, we want to make sure that our blade is exactly 90 degrees. So you can buy these really cool angle finders. They're magnetic. Put them on our table, and we are one? So first things first, if you've got long hair, tie it back. Something you always want to be conscious of. My hair is not really long enough that it could get caught up in anything, but I just feel more comfortable with my hair tied back. I've got my safety glasses, respiratory mask, because I'm running some plywood. I've got 15.5 inches this way, so if I don't want to use one of the push sticks, not necessarily, I don't have to. I can just push right through because I've got enough room. But if I were to use a push stick, my favorite is the one that clamps on here, and also the grippers. They hang on nice and tight, and they help push through. And another way to cut a little bit of end grain is use the miter gauge in the miter slot. It keeps it nice and steady and gives you a clean, straight cut. And as a last option for safety, you can push through with just your hands, but make sure that you keep your hands at least 6 inches away from the blade. A good point of reference for that is the miter slots on either side. Push through nice and evenly and keep your hands outside. So there you have it, the very basics on how to use a table saw. Now, I have to be very honest with you. Of all the tools that you see around here and all the tools that I have worked, the table saw used to be the most intimidating tool to me. Why? Because nobody took the time to show me how to be safe and how to really work the tool. The table saw is not one of those tools you kind of want to figure it out, because if you want to work a tool, you've got to know how the tool works. For this and more, visit us at familyhandyman.com.